All right, everyone, welcome back to week 3 of the Family Beatdown Fantasy League preview show. Great week that we had, both on the field and in the fantasy application here. Talking about on the field, we hadn't talked much in these little updates about our ongoing USC Notre Dame rivalry, but here we go. Notre Dame had a nice win against Michigan State after a heartbreaking loss against Michigan the week before, one of the greatest classic football games of recent memory. And then they, opened the season in the middle of the hurricane and dropped one to South Florida. So got off to a 1-2 start. But again, looked really great against Michigan and all but won that game, and then took care of business against Michigan State. Notre Dame goes into Pittsburgh this weekend to take on the Pitt Panthers. Not so sure that that's going to be a great game. I think Notre Dame should win on that one, but you can never tell. Pitt does field a team. USC, on the other hand, off to a 3-0 start. They dropped out of the top 25 after barely beating Minnesota, and then they took care of business against Utah, but they weren't convincing. But then on Saturday, the Syracuse Orangemen were in town, and they got their butts spanked to the tune of 38-17, and now the Trojans take off to the desert this weekend to face the Arizona State Devils. And as you folks back in the Midwest know, ASU was beaten this week by the Fighting Illini, who also have cracked into the top 25 by virtue of that win. ASU was a top 22 team when the Illini punched them in the face. So good move on the Illini's part. So anyway, let's take a look at our league, and we'll be quick about it this week. I went 3-3 on my picks last week, and that makes me 6-6 on the year. So again, I'm basically just flipping a coin over here. But let's start right at the top. I've been playing fantasy sports now for probably 10 years, and I've seen it 2 times, this being the second time, and that is a 200-point performance in a scoring system such as this. Jake on his blue and gold team posted 202.6. Now, I might say that of the 200-plus point games, this is the lowest point total. The other one was a 212-point victory. So just, take that for a little bit, Jake. You're not all that, but you did a really, really great job against my 154. And that's what stings. That's what stings. 154, I'm going to win most games, but not against Jake. And if you look at Jake's team, his tight end did 7.9, and everybody else was double figures for Jake. So really good performance by Jake in blue and gold, who moves to 2-0, and I drop to 0-2. Looking at Mighty Blumpkin versus Mama for Bouldins, Veronica is still off to a strong start. She's undefeated, putting up 125 points against Alex's 111. Sanchez only puts up 30 for Alex. Antonio Gates gets a 0, and early Doucette. Who's that? Early Doucette puts up 2 for Alex. So Alex is out there fishing for the names. And then Hakeem Nicks had a rough night. He was banged up from the week before. So anyway, Mama for Bold is off to a blistering 2-0 start. Blumpkins limping along at 1-1. Talking about 1-1, Invincibles improves to 1-1 with a convincing 133-116 win over Team Quincy. Dad had Matt Schaub with 35 points. Ray Rice with 15, but the big surprising performance is that one from Tony Gonzalez. And if you guys remember, too, going into that Sunday night game, these two teams were separated by 0.6 of a point. Less than a point. Dad had an advantage. Both of them had their tight ends playing in a Sunday night game, which had Atlanta versus Brent Selleck and the Philadelphia Eagles. And Gonzalez had a great night with 2 touchdowns, and Dad be able to pull away 133-116. Quincy drops to 0-2. Dad at 1-1. Another game that I blew the call on, I thought Nads was going to get the nod. Nads did get my nod, but they only scored 98 points, didn't even break 100. Brandon Lloyd with a goose egg for Paul. Brandon Pettigrew with 0.7. Awful, pitiful. And then Sebastian Janikowski, after kicking the 63-yarder the week before, posts 5. Matt Ryan had a decent night on Sunday night with 40. But Miles Austin, 37.1 points, playing with Tony Romo, who had a punctured lung. That's some guts football right there from Mr. Eastern Illinois. Jeremy Macklin, 34.2 points for Fudge Your Face, and 15 for that defense. LeGarrette Blount with 19. Fudge Your Face doing nothing to manage his team, getting on with a 1-1 record. Nads drops to 0-2. Another big scoring game, 149 to 144, 159.8 to 144.8. Beast in the East moves to 1-1 over the Deceptions, who drops to 1-1. Michael Vick, 32 points, but Mike Williams, negative 0.4. Matt Forte with 21, and Rob Gronkowski, not to be confused with the other Gronkowski they have in New England now, his brother, 85 and 87. Any rate, 144.8 for Jed Brady. Whew, what? He always throws for 400 yards a game now. 65.6 points for Tyson. Coupled that with Jason Witten and Deion Branch and a Pittsburgh defense at post 25. Tyson gets the W. And in another barn burner, 193.2 to 144.2. The Rednecks hanging up on the Dogs in convincing style. I mean, 193, I was going on and on about Jake's 200 points. Well, 193 is not too bad either. That's a very good day. Boy, Dawn, you could really help yourself by putting in somebody other than Jason Snelling, 0.8 points. Man, I can't believe you missed that. But everything else you did was perfect. And you are the class of the organization, the class of the league, now at 2-0 and sitting atop of the standings. Rick drops to 1-1. Now, looking at this week's matchups, week number 3. And again, no bye weeks this week. We don't start bye weeks until week number 5, and this be week number 3. So looking at week number 3, oh man, Mama of 4 Bouldins coming to smell this, or I should say the other way around. I'm going out and visit Mama of 4 Bouldins. That's an 0-2 team against a 2-0 team, my friends. Phillip Rivers against Kansas City. That's a great matchup for me. Braylon Edwards needs to get off against Cincinnati. Tony Romo, Washington. I don't know if Romo's going to play with that aforementioned punctured lung. I give the nod to smell this like I do. Team Quincy against the Rednecks. That's an 0-2 team against a 2-0 team. Dawn, you're coming back to earth this week, girl. Aaron Rodgers, he's going against the Bears, so he'll get 1 billion points. But I don't like the Javad Best matchup against Minnesota, and I don't like the Jerome Simpson matchup against San Francisco. Quincy got Big Ben against Indy, and Indy is horrible this year. Reggie Bush goes against Cleveland, and they're always horrible. Quincy's going to get the nod because it's time to start knocking off undefeated teams, my friends. They're all our enemies. We don't want any undefeateds. Nothing personal. That 2-0 record's got to go. Invincibles take on Beast in the East, 126 to 129 on paper. Matt Schaub against New Orleans, not a favorable matchup. And Dwayne Bowe against San Diego, not a favorable matchup for Dad. On Tyson's part, Tom Brady takes on Buffalo, who's red hot this year. I'm saying Buffalo is off to a 2-0 start, their best in eons. Who else? Deshaun Jackson against the Giants. That's going to be a bloodbath. And Chris Johnson against Denver. This is a tough one. I'm going to put momentum in Dad's corner. I'm going to go with the Invincibles. Sorry about that, Ty. Going to go with the Invincibles. All right, Mighty Blumpkins against Fudge Your Face. 1-1 against 1-1, 114 to 122 with a slight advantage to Fudge Your Face. On Fudge Your Face, Matt Ryan against Tampa Bay, not a good matchup. Andre Johnson against New Orleans, tough. LeGarrette Blount against Atlanta, just a lot of tough defenses for you, Mr. Michael Blumpkin. Sanchez goes against Oakland. That should be pretty good. Jordy Nelson against Chicago. Adrian Peterson against Detroit. I'm going to go with Fudge Your Face. Gonna go with Fudge Your Face. It might be obvious, might not be obvious, but for me, I'm going with Fudge Your Face. Mud Dogs against the Deceptions, 1-1 and 1-1, the best 2 1-1 teams in our league. Vic against the Giants for Deceptions. Breeze against Houston for Rick. On paper, this looks to be a pretty one-sided affair for Mud Dogs. That puts Deceptions as the underdog. Me likes the challenge. I'm going with Deceptions. And in our game of the week, father against son, 2-0 versus 0-2. We're talking about the annual Blue and Gold versus Nads matchup. 118 to 121 on paper. Eli against Philly for Jake. Mike Wallace against Indy. Oh, good matchup there. Michael Turner, who's just been pouring into points, and Darren McFadden also with a nice matchup against the Jets. Paul's got Cutler in there against Green Bay. That's not going to work. Enough said. Jake remains perfect at 3-0. It pains my heart, but we got to start knocking off these undefeated teams. So anyway, folks, that's our wrap up for this week. Have a good week. We'll see you next week. So long.